Okay. Good morning, everybody. Okay. I get a new Pasha. I want to try to find a diagram. I'll show it to you on the. Try to find it on the internet. I couldn't find it. Okay, I'll have to show it to you on the on this book. Okay, let's start new Pasha, my friends. This week we read the Pasha of Truma, beautiful Pasha, which talks about the building of the Mishkan in the desert. God spoke to Moses, saying, holding chapter 25, verse 1. Israel, speak to the Jewish people, truma, and they shall take for me an offering. From every person whose heart inspired him, his generosity, you should take for him you shall take my offering. So Rashi says, why does it say the word lishmi li? Li means lishmi. That when you do something, you should take it for the sake of God. You shouldn't take it for your own personal reasons, but you should give it for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's a mitzvah. Truma, what means truma? The word truma means separation. It means to separate from their money. Yidvenu liboy. Rashi says the word yidvenu is an expression on a dava. An adava means a goodwill, something that comes from the heart. Tikhu eser masi, you shall take your truma. So Rashi says, you'll see, it says over here, in this pasuk alone, it says twice. The next pasuk, it says another time, the word truma. So Rashi says, our rabbis teach us, the word truma is mentioned 3 times, because there were 3 offerings are mentioned here. One is the offering of the beka, per head. Yesterday was Pasha Shkolim, and there was an obligation to give a beka lagalgelis, which made the sockets in the Elab Kudei. It's mentioned later. These are the count according to the offering of the beka per head, from which to purchase the communal sacrifice. And another is the offering of the Mishkan, where they brought them, each one donated to the Mishkan. The 13 materials mentioned in this section, in this chapter, were all required for the work of the Mishkan and for the garments of the Kehanim, and as we find when we study them. So there are three different, two were, one was the Beka, one was the what we read yesterday, to give a machzah shekel, and then there was one. The last one was everybody gave according to their capability. For the first 2 were exact, and the third one was every person according to what he wanted to give. Verse 3. This is the third truma. What Rashi mentioned. This is the offering you should take for them: zav, gold; kesef, silver; nechoshes, copper. So Rashi says, zav, kesef, and nechoshes, kulam, bob, and adava. This is the third charity. Each person what his heart inspired him to give, except the silver, which he gave equal. That was one of the beka. That was one of the trumas that each one gave exactly a beka, a half a shekel for each individual. We do not find throughout the entire work of the Mishkan that more silver was required, because the silver was done for very specific things. As it says, the silver of the community census was beka per head. So the silver was given a beka per head, and the gold and the copper and the rest of the stuff, as we continue, was given whatever a person wanted to give his heart's desire. Verse 4. Chelas, blue; agamam, purple; telas, shani, which is crimson wool; sheish, which is linen; ve'izim, and goat's hair. So Rashi says, chelas His wool dyed by blood of the chilazon. This is also the blue wool that the Torah says you put it on the fringe of your tzitzis. Argaman is wool dyed by a kind of dye called argaman, which is more purple. V'sheish, and what is sheish is pishtan, linen. Ve'izim, so Rashi says the hair of goats. If Uncle Sven's is me'izi, what comes from goats, but not the goat itself, meaning not the goat skin. It was they knew how to take the hair of the izim. Was a very what do you call it, complicated thing to do, to take this hair and to make it into a garment, which was to protect the Mishkan from rain. Verse 5, Va'iris elim, and ram skin, Ma'adamin, which was dyed red, Va'iris tchashim, Va'atzei shchitim, and tchashim skins and acacia wood. So that says Ma'adamin mitzvahs adam, lacha adam. These were dyed after they were tanned. Tchashim, if I can get you a picture, would be nice, so you exactly know what I'm talking about. So this was the skin, the cover that was izim, that was the color of the hair of goats. It covered the entire Beis Hamikdash, Mishkan, and this was the beautiful ram skin dyed red, tchashim skin, which Rashi should say what that means. That's the tchashim skin right over here. It was very colorful skins. Ateishitim is acacia wood. So that's just tchashim. This right over here. This was a special animal that exists only for a short time and had many colors. Therefore, Uncle Sven's sasguna, because it rejoiced, and sas, it was happy, it boasted with its colors. And that was the cover of the Mishkan. That's a shitim. So there was acacia wood. Now these woods were made out of trees. So now she's bothered. These are the acacia. These are the woods. The beams of the Beis Hamikdash. The beams of the Beis Hamikdash. So these beams were 15 feet tall. They needed over 60 beams. 60 beams of dust the Mishkan itself. They needed over 120 beams. Man, where they have in a desert these kind of trees, 15 feet tall each. Peter Shabtam, so the Tanchuma says in the Medrash that Yaakov Avinu foresaw the Holy Spirit that the Israelites were destined to build a Mishkan in the desert. So he brought cedars to Egypt, and he planted these cedar trees. He had a cedar forest, and he commanded his son to take them with them when they left Egypt. It's a fascinating thing. They schlepped these 15, 20-foot trees out of Mitzrayim, because Yaakov Avinu told them, you're going to need these cedar trees. Unbelievable. Verse number 6. Shem el Hamar, oil for the lighting. B'samim l'shem el hamishcha, and you need to have spices for anointing oil. L'kteres hasamin, and for incense. Shem el Hamar, pure olive oil contained with the kindling of the light. Rashi says, b'samim l'shem mishkan, the oil that anointed the vessels later on. They needed oil to anoint the vessels. And they needed to have spices, as it's going to be mentioned in Parshas Kisisa. That they used to bring ketoret, which they burnt every evening and every morning, as it's brought in the portion of Ata Tetzava later on. And ketoret, Rashi says, comes from the word kitor, which is a column of smoke. And it says that the column of smoke went totally up to the heavens. Verse 7. Avner shoyim, shoham stones. Avne miluyim, and filling stones. This all will be explained. Le'ephod v'lachoshen, for the ephod and the choshen. I'll show you a quick picture of the what he means, and this is exactly what it means. These are the stones in the ephod. The picture of the stones in the ephod. So this was the breastplate. So they had stones, and the Avnei Shoham is these stones right on top. Avnei Shoham, the Shoham stones. He had two Shoham stones. So Rashi says, I said, Shtayim hutzluchu sham l'teirach ha'ephod. There were two Avnei Shohams that were needed for the ephod, and this is really mentioned later on. We're going to learn it in Pashas Tetzaveh. Meluyim, they were filling stones. These were called the filling stones on his breastplate. They were called the filling stones. La'ephod, meluyim sh'ayisuyim. They were like you have a diamond ring that has a socket. You put the diamond in its holder, so they're called filling stones. Kimin guma v'neis even sham lefleis aguma. They put the stone into the socket. Kruyim avni meluyim. That's what they're called. They're called filling stones. Umakom meshi kruyim mushbetas. In the place where they sit, it's called a mushbetas, a setting. That's a setting. Leifel achoshen. So Rashi says the shom stones were for the ephod. The filling stones were for the choshen, the breastplate. That's the choshen is called the breastplate. The ephod is called the that goes underneath the breastplate. The apron that hangs underneath the breastplate is called the this is called the choshen. That's called a choshen, and that's called the ephod. This is the ephod. His apron, we call it apron, and that's the Avnei Shoham, the two stones that were on top of that from those straps, the ephod hung. This is a beautiful, beautiful clothes of the Kohen. I will learn more later. Verse number 8. V'hasuli mikdash, make for me a tabernacle. V'shachanti b'seicha, make for me a sanctuary, and I'll dwell in their midst. Rashi says again, we hear the word says li. Whenever it says li, it means lishmi. It means it needs to be done for the sake of God. And that's why it says li. It should be done for the sake of God. Verse number 9. Whenever I show you, God was the architect of this Mishkan. Where I show you the pattern of this Mishkan. Vestavdans kol kelev, in the pattern of all its vessels. And that's the way you should do it. So Rashi says, Mishkan. Wherever I show you today this pattern, as it says before, you shall make me a Mishkan. So the Eibishter gave him, when he gave the commandment, you shall make a Mikdash, he gave him the patterns. The Chen Tasu, and this the way you should do it. So Rashi says, this means this is a command for generations. That's not only this Mishkan, that these are the vessels you need to have. Even later on, it needs to be in this kind of a fashion. And that's why even Shlomo Melech built the exact same vessels that were in the temple of Moshe Rabbeinu. And Amitzah Mashiach comes, we'll have the exact same vessels in the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi. And that's why it's important to know the way the Beis HaMikdash was, because Mitzvah will have it that soon. Verse
Can't wait.
And you shall make for me an ark made out of acacia wood. It's 2.5 cubits its length. And a cubit and a half its width. And a cubit and a half its height. So Rashi says, you make a chest that is without feet. And this is the way it looked. There were 3 chests, one of gold, the wood inside, and the gold inside the wood. So there were 3 chests that he made. This is the chest that we're talking about. That was a 2.5 amas its length, an am and a half its width, and an am and a half its height. So that's what he said. Rashi said next verse. You shall make an overlay of pure gold. mibayis umechutz, from the inside and from the outside. You shall cover it with gold. It means there was something in the middle. You should make a crown, and that's the crown. You should make a crown around it. So now she says, he made 3 arks. Bezalel made 3 arks, 2 of gold and 1 of wood. They all had 4 whorls and a bottom. They all had like a box. And he put the gold one on the outside, the wood in the middle, and the gold in the inside. And you couldn't see the wood because the gold had a lip, as you see, had a lip that covered the wood of the box. So when you opened up the Aron, you saw only gold. From the outside, you saw only gold. In the middle was wood. Zeh zahav. It needs to have a crown. I can show you a better picture. It needs to have a crown of gold. We can get a better picture of this crown. Okay, so this is the way it looked, and that's the crown. It needs a crown of gold, and that's its sticks, as the Torah. It's badim. These are the badim, the rings of the badim, and the bottom of the poles that carried the Aron, and that's its crown, and that was the cherubim that was on it, and that's what you saw. That's what the Aron looked when you looked at it from the outside. So Rashi says, "Zahav kimin keser," was like a crown that ran around it, and this was the outside. This crown was on the outside part of the ark, the box of the outside, not the box of the inside, the box of the outside. V'yatzakta, verse 12, and you shall make 4 rings, as I said, 4 rings. 4 rings were made on this box. 4 rings that the poles went into. So it needs to be done. Now she says on the top of the box, closer to the top, and the poles, as the Torah says, it needs to have 2 poles on each side, and this is by pleasure. And you have to have two rings on each side. Has to be 2 both on both sides. Verse 13. Vasisa, then you make bade atzi shittim. You have to make poles of acacia wood, pieces of, and it would have to be covered with gold. So this was you didn't see the wood, just like you didn't see the wood in the box. The wood was covered. So to the poles were wood covered by gold. And you're gonna put these badim you're gonna put the badim into the rings. On the sides of the ark. Lossasadim, which should carry the ark. And here there's a law by the Aron. Verse 15. The poles will always be in the ark. You're never allowed to take it off. So there were other vessels that also had, as you'll see in the Torah, had these poles. But when they were in the Beis Hamikdash, you took it out the poles because you're not carrying them. But the poles of the ark were always in the ark, even when it rested in the Holy of Holies. Forever, you're not allowed to take out the poles. Verse 16. You put into the ark. You're going to put into this box. As you see, the box was an empty box. So you're going to put into this box as a edus, the 10 Commandments, asher eter alecha, which I gave to you. So in that box was the 10 Commandments that God gave to the Jewish people. And that's the chitas of the day. The chumash of the day, the chumash of today. We're going to go to the Tanya of the day. Today is the second day of Adar, and we are holding in chapter 29 of Tanya, the fifth part of this chapter. It's a long chapter, and the 5th part of this chapter. Now, the Rebbe is explaining why ultimately even a person who has a nefesh habahamis, who has a negative soul, and it becomes part of him, is really not real. It's really something that a person can overcome. right? Alter Rebbe first frightened us a little bit and told us that we should know who we are, and we have to make an accounting of all the sins we have done, and therefore we are not so holy, blah, blah, blah. And it might frighten us. And it might tell us that basically, forget it, we cannot overcome ourselves. So the Alter Rebbe says that is not true. I didn't want to frighten you. I just wanted to tell you the truth. And here is another truth. Because the reason I tell you that a humbling spirit can break the evil, I'm telling you this because you might think, oh, you have to mamish, like break yourself. No, you have to have a little bit humility. It's a very important thing, humility. Have a little humility, and my evil will break easily, because that's another truth. In truth, there's no truth, there's no substance, to whatsoever to Sitra. There's really no substance to it. Its life is what I give it. There's no reality to it. And therefore it'll go away the second you reveal some light. So therefore, don't be afraid of something that really has no existence. Its existence is what I give it. So the negativity that I have is there because I give it life. If I want to take its life away, it's very easy because it has no substance. The expression sheker ein lo lagayim. Sheker, the word sheker, shin kufresh, which is falsity, the Gemara says has no feet. If you take the word sheker, the shin is on a point, the kuf is on a point, the reish is on a point, it has no feet. If it can fall down very easily. Emes, the word emes, aleph has 2 feet, mem has a base to it, saf has 2 feet, but sheker has no ein lo laglayim. Sheker has no feet. Because it has sheker, falsity is not true. Something is holding it up. The sheker. You just have to stop holding it up and it'll fall down. So too, the other side. I'm not telling you that it doesn't have strength. And it has a lot of strength. It gives power to all impurities. God also to the animalistic soul of a Jew. Its power doesn't come from itself. Evil's power doesn't come from itself. That's a general rule between what's Kedusha and what's the opposite of Kedusha. Kedusha has its own power, has its own vitality. Tumah, impurity, has a vitality for something else, has an existence for some other reason. The reason why God gave Tumah existence is because to challenge Kedusha, not because there's a purpose in itself. Kedusha, something that is holy, has a purpose within itself. Anything that's opposite of holy is only there for some other reason. So therefore, it has no purpose within itself. And therefore, it doesn't have its own life force. Its life force is dependent on something else. So the challenge is there, so I overcome the challenge. The second I overcome the challenge, it's not existence. And the Alter Rebbe will explain that. It's there only because of the holiness. And therefore, it's nullified totally from the holiness. Like you take darkness and bring some light in it, it disappears. The darkness doesn't move away, it disappears. It doesn't like walk away. You take a dark room, you bring a candle in, it becomes light. Because the darkness had existence because there was no light, not because it has per se its own existence. Now, the only thing is, because of the godly soul, the course of the godly soul, the Abisha says, I want to make a challenge. I want to make free choice. If I'm not going to give this person an animalistic soul, so then he has no free choice. His godly soul is going to be overpowering him, and he'll do everything because he has a godly soul. So therefore, I'm going to make a plus and a minus. I'm going to make a yin and a yang, so to say. I'm going to make the challenge, and then he'll have to prove his godly soul. If not, he's just going to be a godly being without having the challenge of humanity. So therefore, I had no choice. I had to give the human being an animalistic soul. Not because there's a purpose in the animalistic soul. The purpose is the godly soul. But that the person should be able to feel that he has accomplished, I made him an animalistic soul. So it's only there for the animalistic godly soul. So the whole reason, according to this, is because I have an animalistic soul, because I have a godly soul. The truth is, the bigger the animalistic soul I have, it shows how big my godly soul is. So the person would overcome it and overpower his animalistic soul. Because that's the breaking of the heart. That and it becomes abhorrent and despised in his eyes. So that's why I have an animalistic soul. That it's truth. That I should break my animalistic soul and reveal my godly soul. If not, if I didn't have an animalistic soul, it would be my job. It would be basically God accomplishing everything, not me doing anything. Through that I waken up, I break my heart in this world. I'd have some humility. I waken up in an unbelievable light above. From there, I will bring you down, says God. To the Sitra Achra, which seeks to rise against godness, obscure it. I break the Sitra Achra, and God will bring down the Sitra Achra. And that's why we say that ultimately, the ultimate evil and tumah of the world, God has to eradicate. But I need to take away a little tumah, impurity in this world, and God will do the rest. This means that he deprives it of its domain. I deprive the Sitra Achra of its domain and power, and withdraws from it the strength and authority which had been given to rise up against the light of holiness of the divine soul. I take away that power. And what happens? If I take away the power of my animalistic soul, so something happens automatically, because the Sitra Achra has no power really. It's the power that I gave it. So when I take away a little of its power, it becomes nullified, and a darkness disappears. That's why the Alter Rebbe keeps on saying, a little light chases away a lot of darkness, because darkness has no existence, and a little light is unbelievable existence, and this little light will chase away all darkness. The Alter Rebbe gives an analogy of what we find the story of the Meraglim. The Meraglim were the spies who went to check out Israel, Moshe Rabbeinu. They came back with their statement. What was the Meraglim, the spy statement? Israel's too, the nations are too strong. And what do they really mean? The sages say, Al tikum imenoi. Don't say from he, mimenoi from it. He meant from him. They said these nations are too strong for God. God forbid. They didn't believe in the strength of God. They said maybe God doesn't have the power to overcome 31 nations, powerful nations. And then 10 minutes later, if God showed his anger, suddenly said, oh, we believe in God. We're going to go out. What happened? How does something change in a couple of minutes? How did suddenly they go from non-believing to believing in a couple of seconds? How is it possible? That's because they got afraid. That doesn't make any sense. These were very strong people. These were very strong-minded people. How do they go from believing to not believing? I'm not believing to believing in a couple of minutes. So Alter Rebbe says, what brought back the ability for them to believe in God? God, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't show any million, didn't take a stick and split the sea. He told them, you're angering God. What are you doing? What are you angering God? That's all he told them. He told them, listen. You know what? He told them, listen. God, you angered God. Now we're going to be stuck in the desert 40 years. So if he showed them a miracle, he split for them the sea. Okay, he say, okay, I believe. He didn't tell them anything. He actually told them negative. He said, you know what? You're now stuck in the desert 40 years. So suddenly they started believing in God. No, my friends, out to Rebbe says. Because the truth is, a Jew is a believer. The Jew is a believer. The Jews believed in the desert. They believed what happened. And that's like a Jew in the desert is a Jew everywhere. We're believers, the sons of believers. What happened was, for a moment, your animalistic soul overpowers your godly soul. And suddenly it comes to a situation you don't believe in God almost. It makes you egotistical. It makes you egotistical to a level that the owner also doesn't have any common sense. Does basically become ego. That's ego. Ego, you forget, you become selfish. You become self-centered. That's why the second they heard God was angry. How much longer are you going to be a nation that is wicked? You're going to die this day. You're not going to come to Israel. God was spoken. Why will I do this to this evil congregation? When they heard God saying that, that's like pushing a Jew to the corner. That's what happened. They broke their hearts. As the Tosik says, and the people mourned greatly, had a broken heart. They became humble. What happened the second they became humble? The ego broke. The darkness disappeared. They lost their haughtiness. They lost their arrogance. That's humility. Lose your arrogance. And what came out? What they were. Maminim. Believers, sons of believers. We saw out of him, Maminim. And the Jewish people are believers. And that was revealed. And this every Jew can learn. The Torah tells us a story because this story is an everlasting story. And we always can learn from it. The second it falls into your heart, in your thoughts, sveikas alamuna. The second it falls into any Jew, a suffix in belief. You should know. This is the words of your animalistic soul. This is the words of the Sitra Achra. Hamagbi atzmal nafshay, that it's trying to overpower you over your soul. But no, nevertheless, you're a believer. V'gam Sitra Achra, and even your animalistic soul, ein lo sfeikas klal. It also is a believer. It also is a believer. It has to do his job. It was given the permission to mix me up. In words of falsity, umirma, and deceitfulness, in order to make it richer. So the animalistic soul has a job to confuse me, to mix me up. And the more I get mixed up, the more it is accomplished, doing its job. As the example that the Gemara gives, that when the king wanted to test out his only son, so he decided he would send a prostitute to his son to see if the prince was worthy to be a king one day. He sends this prostitute, this Zaina. The prostitute has a job to entice this young boy. Self-understood. The prostitute, if she accomplishes her job, she will get rewarded. If she doesn't accomplish her job, she'll be very happy because she knows the intention of the king. She knows the king wants to bring out the greatness of the son. So if the son doesn't sin, everybody's happy. The king is happy. Even the prostitute is happy. And the prince is happy. If she does sin, then the king is sad. Even the prostitute is sad. But it did its job, and the prince will also be sad. And that is the analogy. My nefesh bahamis is like a prostitute, sent by God to see who I am and what I am. Am I going to overcome it? I can't blame my nefesh. In essence, I cannot blame my nefesh Bahamas because it was sent by God to do a job. If I will not listen to this nefesh Bahamas, God is going to be happy. I will be happy, and even my nefesh Bahamas will be happy because it's there for the challenge, and it hopes also that I will overcome the challenge. And that's the beauty of this analogy, self-understood. Bahamas is animalistic, my animalistic soul, my evil inclination, has many names. Sitra Achra, the other side, my animalistic soul, my evil inclination, all are the same, different, depends on the levels. This analogy is given in the Zohar HaKadosh, in the holy book of the Zohar. Beautiful Tanya of the day. And today is the second day of the month of Adar, which starts on chapter 10, and it goes from chapter 10 all the way to chapter 17. So 10 to 17, you would have done the chitas of the day. Have a beautiful, happy, wonderful day. Today, at 10 o'clock, we learned the 53rd chapter of Tanya. Have a beautiful day. See you all at 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Rabbi.